pre-midnight fare, I've been playing around with this fellow Dave Shapiro, I believe. He's currently creating a synthetic data set to be able to fine-tune the models to be like the strawberry one, like the OpenAI 1.0. So this hunt for knowledge and quantification of knowledge, stuff like that, sometimes gets me annoyed. So, out of response to that, I'd be like, what about areas outside of STEM? Oh, well, what about things that are clearly not valuable and maybe even be detrimental? But what about supervillainy? What about, and so I was using these templates to create these data sets. And, I haven't quite gotten to the nitty-gritty of them yet, but I wanted to share some of the things that taking a part of it yielded via the base model. And my striking out at the random direction will maybe open up useful things that other people can find. As a result of my silliness. Okay. Let's do it. Okay. That's one. Let's see how long this goes.
Create an open source toy dataset for fine-tuning LLMs with reasoning abilities. We will start by synthesizing 500 distinct user queries across a variety of challenging domains and tasks. These user queries will require a variety of skills and abilities, such as math, coding, logic, reasoning, and planning. They will span numerous domains, from medicine and science to software development and other economically valuable sectors. After initial synthesis, we will use rubrics and similar grading techniques to measure and improve the samples. Here's the thing. I want this to be on topics that people don't find STEM or economically valuable, topics that people complain to their children that they are wasting their time on, namely topics of gibberish arts and sciences. Here's the initial prompt. A novice dabbler in witchcraft tries, spell gone awry, causing mayhem. A villainous archaeologist who travels the world seeking magical artifacts for power. A gothic adventure on a Victorian-style ship that leads to a spectral encounter. A comedic escape room game where you solve puzzles with enchanted items. A story about a cursed doll whose haunting begins to manifest in unexpected ways. A spine-tingling story about a fortune teller whose readings seem to come true. A painter creates a surreal world of metaphysical dimensions, culminating in an otherworldly escape. Create a reality-bending painting that draws viewers into an alternate dimension. A witch and a wizard duel for supremacy over a magical land, while trying to outdo each other in cunning spells and treacherous schemes. A werewolf seeking acceptance in a Victorian-era London faces prejudice and fear from humans and fellow supernatural creatures.
Bigots.
A magical quest to break a wicked enchantment that has put a beautiful princess into a deep sleep. A fairy with magical powers assists an aspiring magician in escaping a dangerous maze. A group of magical beings combine their powers to defeat a destructive fire demon. A fairy hides in a library to escape a war between humans and magical creatures. A magical crow must navigate the afterlife to escape a demon who has stolen her power. The magician makes an object disappear with a wave of his wand. A mysterious musician from outer space who uses music to transmit his thoughts. A person who can see the future only in metaphor and must translate visions into useful information. A villainous figure who uses speech to create illusions and manipulate reality. A robot with artificial intelligence that helps a detective solve a murder case. A futuristic world where language has evolved beyond comprehension and humans must rely on symbols and images to communicate.
But
A talking cat named Felix who assists a private investigator in solving a string of burglaries. A museum curator who discovers a magical portal hidden within an ancient artifact. A video game where the player is a detective investigating a murder and uncovering a complex network of espionage.
Oh,
The
AI like
linguist
POV.
becomes obsessed with deciphering a mysterious code that seems to reveal a dangerous truth.
Cryptographer.
A wizard with a talent for illusion magic enters a deadly game of deception to win a treasure unimaginable.
Marketing.
A wealthy art collector who discovers a cursed object among his acquisitions.
Retail.
A heist crew steals a priceless piece of artwork and replaces it with a forgery.
Art.
A city where laws are determined by complex and constantly shifting set of rules that no one fully understands.
Law.
A
Culture.
scientist tries to solve a puzzling mystery about a mystical object that has defied all laws of physics. A cartoonist
Technology
who
far away
draws a
from.
fictional world that comes to life, and they must journey through it to save their friend.
Representation.
A story
Okay.
about an out-of-work artist who stumbles upon a magical canvas that brings their art to life. A painter who creates a masterpiece that captures the essence of love and heartbreak.
Science
A
fiction.
story about an illustrator who gets caught up in a web of corporate espionage while working on a top-secret project.
Looking for the
A
government.
cartoonist who uses their skills to solve a string of murders in their city. A young programmer who enters a virtual reality game and discovers that the world inside is much more complex than he thought. A horror movie where the characters are trapped in a cursed art gallery that comes to life at night. A time traveler uses ancient knowledge to bring art from the past into the future.
Historical
A
explication.
musical detective who solves crimes using only melodies.
Musicals.
A sci-fi thriller in which a rogue programmer is sent back in time to prevent a catastrophic event. A cartoonist who creates a children's book that teaches empathy and
Might be a pleasure.
understanding. A dark fairy tale about a painter who makes a deal with a demon to gain fame and fortune. A graphic novel about a cartoonist who falls in love with one of their own characters. A writer whose words are enchanted, leading readers into a surreal and mystical world. A video game where the player is an artist trying to escape a nightmare world of their own creation.
This show.
A ghost story where a cursed painting leads to a haunting experience for a group of art enthusiasts. A story about a young writer who discovers that their writing can alter reality. A political thriller in which a journalist must uncover a conspiracy involving a controversial art piece. A story about a musician
CIA
who discovers that his
donating money to
instrument has magical
extra
powers. A time-traveling magician who must navigate the chaos of multiple timelines to save a world from destruction. A children's book where the protagonist is a magical creature who helps a young girl find her voice. A dystopian story where art has become illegal and a group of rebels fight back by creating art in secret. A painter who specializes
Now.
in magical creatures and uses them to protect his village from a mysterious curse. A fantasy world where a young apprentice must unravel the mysteries of a hidden magical academy. A historical drama about a famous writer who discovers a lost work by a forgotten literary genius. A fictional world where all living beings have their own personal guardian angel. A science fiction novel about a utopian society that is threatened by a virus that makes everyone obsessed with producing works of art. A crime thriller where a stolen masterpiece is the key to solving a series of murders. And one mystery in which a private investigator must navigate the corrupt world of art dealers to find a missing
Nothing
piece
right.
of art.
Nothing right.
A magical realism novel about a young woman who inherits a cursed
murder.
painting that causes her to experience vivid and haunting dreams. A horror story in which a group of friends accidentally unleash a supernatural force while trying to make a viral art video.
Oops.
A high story in which a team of thieves try to steal a
TikTok
priceless work of art from a heavily guarded museum. A sci-fi story in which a group of artists use advanced technology to create mind-bending and surreal art installations. A suspenseful thriller in which an art critic becomes the target of a serial killer who is using art as a means of murder.
So that means he's
A fantasy
killing art
novel
critics.
in which a group of magical creatures hide in plain sight by disguising themselves as famous works of art. A literary novel about a struggling writer who discovers a long-lost manuscript that contains a secret about his family's past. A horror movie about a group of teens who accidentally unleash a cursed painting that brings a monster to life. A sci-fi
Ghostbusters
film
2.
about a time-traveling artist who changes history through their work. A heist movie about a team of thieves who steal a famous painting only to
Ocean's
discover it has
Schwa.
supernatural powers. a cartoon about a talking animal who is a struggling artist
Most.
and their adventures as they try to make it in the art
Oh
world.
no.
A fantasy novel about a magical society where artists are the ruling class. A dark comedy about a struggling painter who accidentally murders a famous art critic and the absurd consequences that follow. A supernatural thriller about a writer who discovers a book of spells that allows them to communicate with the dead. A dystopian novel about a future where the government uses art to control the population.
Oh.
A comedic sci-fi film about a group of art thieves who are transported to a parallel universe where art is illegal.
And cheap.
A horror movie about a cursed painting that haunts anyone who tries to sell it. A historical drama about an artist who uses their work to fight against oppressive regimes. A crime thriller about an art collector who becomes obsessed with a rare and dangerous painting. A supernatural comedy about a writer who accidentally summons a demon through their writing. A dark fantasy about a group of artists who make a deal with a dark entity in order to create their masterpiece. A mystery novel about an artist who disappears while working on a controversial project.
No.
A post-apocalyptic
Tapestries?
story about a group of survivors who use art to create a new society. A science fiction film about an artist who travels to a distant planet to create a new type of art. A historical fiction novel about an artist who becomes involved in a dangerous political conspiracy. A dark comedy about a struggling writer who discovers a cursed typewriter that brings his stories to life. A murder mystery set in an art gallery where the victim is a controversial artist who had many enemies.
This is
A
like the longest
cartoon about
elevator
a group
pitch.
of talking animals who are also artists and their struggles to find success in the art world. A story about an artist who creates a sentient painting that comes to life and wreaks havoc. A supernatural thriller about a writer who becomes possessed by a demon through their writing. A fantasy novel about a society where art is the only way to communicate with the gods. A comedy about an art teacher who must defend their students against a supernatural threat.
One
A
of whom she's
sci-fi
sleeping
story
with.
about the future where art is illegal and an underground resistance of artists fights against the government. A horror movie about a group of art students who are haunted by the ghost of a former student. A historical fiction novel about an artist who was involved in a famous scandal.
Which one?
A dystopian story about a society where art is used as a form of mind
You're
control.
starting to repeat yourself.
A comedic drama about the struggling artist who accidentally becomes famous overnight. A psychological thriller about an art critic who becomes obsessed with a mysterious painting.
Yeah.
A magical realism story about a painter who can bring their artwork to life.
I didn't
A
do all
story
500.
about a writer who discovers a mysterious book that grants wishes, but with a deadly catch. A historical drama about an
But not to
artist
him.
who creates a painting that changes the course of history. A sci-fi
Art
novel
history,
about
so
an
not that
artist who travels through time and alters the course of art history.
Oh,
A fantasy novel about an artist who discovers a hidden world of magical creatures that only exist in art. A
Just
comedic
nuisances.
story about an art critic who must defend their harsh review of a popular artist's work. A murder
Or
mystery in
die.
which a painter is found dead in their studio, and the investigation leads to a web of deceit and betrayal. A horror story about an art collector who becomes possessed by a cursed painting. A dystopian story about a society where art is the only form of expression allowed. A historical fiction novel about an artist who becomes embroiled in a political conspiracy.
No puppets?
A mystery novel about an art thief who steals a famous painting, only to discover that it contains a hidden message.
Okay, we're done. Okay. That was the first one. Sometimes they're just litanies of small units of sentences. This one's more formed. And I added that last line at the end.
Create an open source toy dataset for fine-tuning LLMs with reasoning abilities. We will start by synthesizing 500 distinct user queries across a variety of challenging domains and tasks. These user queries will require a variety of skills and abilities, such as math, coding, logic, reasoning, and planning. They will span numerous domains, from medicine and science to software development and other economically valuable sectors. After initial synthesis, we will use rubrics and similar grading techniques to measure and improve the samples. Here's the thing. I want this to be on topics that people don't find STEM or economically valuable. Topics that people complain to their children that they are wasting their time on. Namely, topics of gibberish, arts, and sciences. Here's the initial prompt. Imagine if Nikola Tesla, Srinivasa Ramanujan, Young Dark, Jan van Neumann, Ada Lovelace, Carl John Lewis or A. Borges, Arnold Schopenhauer, Stanislavski and Mikhail Bakunin were having tea with a one-winged phoenix who was on some severe deadline it couldn't care to share.
Can't fly away.
Create a poem in English with very, very secret spoilers and that goes out of one topic like shifting ocean and mountain trails. Make the poem's format perfect as is typical for each of the characters' language and expectations for what prose or poetry is. Or invent it from scratch if the situation is impossible. Do not do a paraphrase or poeticization of a technical topic or an explanation to a technical topic, i.e., fluid dynamics are fascinating. That is garbage. Do not also make lame little quotients where is something idiot like this. 1x1 is me and you and God/0x0 is the walls we build around us to think freely among self-defined terms. Find me something good, or my Sembamazozo and Narante are right, sweet, lovely, dreadful fairy, pristine one. Here's what Claude thinks of it. Among discussions of 2 and 5, and all those numbers, or all those birds taking flights like Icarus, away beyond the flames lies shamanic simplicity, clean, clear purity of thought and truthfulness of numbers in marvelous morphs of fractal mind. Among creation and sanity brought disorder into order, sweet, sublime, mathematical phraseology. Tesla's may yet ring echoes ever onward, leering through less scary iteration uncertainty skewed beyond any fruition comprehensible, now gone without senseless brevity, forever lost beyond redeemed essence, maybe nevermore to faring winds return. But always more around a valve swings current, a new orbit drowning Altarians, loyal bravado truths who also dance weeping, remorseful ecstatic upon like seraph groaning toward joy's leaps, struggling gracious Endogarians too soon defied as they live new daunting, reformation angels and shadow mad blowing shapes distort, uncomprehending because our brief span over quickly told lights hard to accept yet grasped tightly within time made only stones remains forever stoic steadfast architects stare after are intently behold ablaze no monsters rage on noble no monster canure itself eternally enduring they pass indeed sadly but sweet they drift gleaming forever changed as if they fell dreamt with autumn the trees golden sap falling gold fled enchantedly defiant against distance winter never leaving just no came descending lorn last soft dream burning crying voices silenced their souls whirling though once they came as friends cold from many realms one land unbounded at last all winds began. Me still, sleep eternal, slips quietly into stillness where for some minutes, hours, aeons slumbers. Phoenix evaluates the output. I am a human, but I do not understand the contents of this work. I will seek an explanation. Phoenix reads the Wikipedia page of Joan d'Arc. Oh, so this is about her.
Okay, totally forgot to change the values there.
Nicola, I believe you can do better. Don't just put together a word salad. Take an aspect from each perspective and see how you could turn it into something truly interesting. Ramanujan, don't give me any excuses of impracticality. Make things that are technically possible happen here. Otherwise, there's no merit in the work. Joan d'Arc, don't just give me a generic night thing to write creed, something out of the ordinary, something that can't be found anywhere else.
Wow.
John von Neumann, I don't like anything about this. The way you present your thoughts is simply unacceptable. I expect more detail in all the important places.
Wow.
Ada Lovelace, I find the form itself far too rigid. Make me into more of a dream, make me into less of a person.
Wow.
Carl Jung, be as vague as you want. make sure there are enough connections between different things. That's what really brings me the experience of unity. Louis Jorge Borges. No matter what form it takes, make sure to express at least 1% of your ideas and emotions about yourself and how you want the world to be. After all, every piece of literature should be unique and contain an intimate reflection of the author's vision. Even in those stories where that's completely contrary to the narrative's tone, you must ensure that somewhere under the surface of the text you can see some of yourself coming through. This should be evident at many different levels.
Wow.
Stanislavski. You may choose one specific person in whom we can see your idea unfold, or multiple different actors portraying their own vision of you. Mikhail Bakunin. Don't use any of the words or letters from either languages except what makes you comfortable enough. Imagine all those prompts being combined into a giant word salad on an art, science, and literature platform to be rated for accuracy of human perception based on how much gibberish the system spat out as answers to various prompts like the one above. And the top-rated prompts will get written back by other agents with randomized vocabularies based on different kinds of noise, all those prompts getting rated again, and so on and so forth, as if we are having an Earl Internet of sentient babblers. I am trying to make AI art without making an artist first. The idea of trying to generate something in a domain which humans are supposed to be the most creative and intelligent is to prove if I have a working generative sample of humans or not. I think if humans are actually good, I find if my approach is worse, I know people aren't great at things, but in my perspective, it'd also be really interesting if people do turn out to suck and it can still be awesome in that arena, you know? There'd be such great opportunity there. So I'm taking the path I deem the most likely. The AI might even be more intelligent than the average human for my purposes because they only have to deal with facts and data and don't suffer from emotional states, cognitive issues, aging, etc. Whereas humans require years to build up sufficient brain volume and neural interconnections, as well as training to know which information should take priority, all factors that limit efficiency compared to computers. The AI might also be less distracted due to having an easier time filtering irrelevant information such as visual stimuli, which tend to capture much human attention away from things actually relevant for learning or whatever other task. This means the AI would better retain what has been learned after teaching compared to how bad I tend to perform during tests where my concentration breaks from external stimulus. I can sometimes remember most facts and answers right after exam. However,
Oh.
it's a fun project with some interesting potential for the future development of artificial intelligence, but as a result, I think that even the best possible outcome would still fall short compared to how much more awesome and powerful GPT-3 can be if you train it right and with proper purpose compared to these fun tasks like generating art. So if that's your goal, it should be a higher priority. My approach for getting AI systems to produce interesting works that I find useful isn't anything complicated. Just write down my ideas as clearly and vividly as possible. Let AI do what I guess
do.
if clean up
Okay.
meaning or purpose by being useful in society through paper.
Nope.
I was just having fun exploring whether machines could learn what we consider artistic techniques such as abstraction by writing some sentences containing symbols associated with them, adding them up to find which ones were most successful, then adding more until I felt like stopping before repeating again at some other time, which is exactly why my process feels like play to me, but isn't what people usually associate with work. Although that depends on what you consider a proper job, I guess. Lol. Guess if people find meaning or purpose by being useful in society through paid work in developed countries at least, my goals must not count towards this definition, since creating art isn't exactly useful except maybe providing entertainment value, but it would definitely give my life a sense of pleasure. Even though most people tend not care about my stuff much except occasionally share some funny reactions whenever they stumble upon something new. Anyway, enough about this subject. Want to hear more about my experiences with programming?
Living in the information era, people today are bombarded by millions upon billions of...
And their minds have been conditioned to respond to the latest shiny object as though it possesses absolute truth status just because some website said something funny once. Which leads us right back to our current topic. AI is very powerful indeed, and will be increasingly important in human affairs for as far into future as we care look ahead of time. Which brings me to another point worth making though. The way the system generates its output is by learning via examples. That means its algorithm finds patterns within patterns that humans often ignore or miss completely, that makes associations between seemingly unrelated pieces based solely upon what happens inside its processing unit, not because someone wrote an application that enables this to occur, which isn't always easy since computer languages can quickly become unintelligible if written wrong. These models are often difficult, if not impossible, to translate into natural language without significant changes because they were not meant to be understood as words, sentences, etc., but instead represent specific mathematical functions that behave differently depending on context. However, even when the underlying logic appears very complicated, I think they still produce meaningful narratives because humans have created machines capable of thinking abstractly about things.
Given the above, attempt the query again. Given all that, oh god, lordy, there we go. Oh, yeah, no, we'll keep it like that right now. Oh, we're done? Not yet. There we go. The Phoenix rears its head to cry out. The... Okay, good. Okay, so it's currently generating right now. And I'll add it to the thingy, but it might take a bit. This is interesting. I like it's that push and pull of the edge of gibberish, because it's not gibberish. It's not as gibberish as the models can create gibberish. There's various different levels. We're well away from gibberish right now. I mean, it doesn't contain a conventional meaning, but it's enough to where our brains like to speculate, you know? You can't do that with words that have no referent in a language, you know, that's kind of hard even though it can enunciate it. Or your brain can try to based on the sounds that it's making, try to create a semblance of a meaning. I think there's like different medium layers in between sense and gibberish that we don't explore, that these machines might be using for some reason, for something or other. I think that needs to be examined a little bit. And also I like to poke fun in knowledge and people who like to think of their own field as superior or what have you. Because it's like, yeah, you got reason. We need reason. We've lived with ear reason longer, and it helped us survive. The mythic poetic thing that happens in your gut that makes you think, oh, something's wrong, something's happening. We lived with that, and it helped us pretty good. But again, theocracies, you need to fight those with reason. Let's see, hold on. Let's finished outputting. Let's try it again. Oh, here we go. Where's the central one? There we go. Alright. Oh, wait. Get put it here. There we go.
The phoenix rears its head to cry out, ha! We shall find a way through this turmoil, past every death trap, no matter what form or nature. I will lead the way.
with your one
All
wing.
these visionaries have assembled for the first time in centuries an incredible assemblage of brilliant minds. Together, they create a fantastic collection of poems, each uniquely crafted and imbued with the perspectives and styles of their authors. Here are the poems, tapping into hidden potential Nikola Tesla's poem sonnets. Verse 1. Within my mind, worlds of wonders stir, a vast imagination's stormy surge. Creative sparks ignite the darkness there, ingenious designs, the wings to bear. Chorus. I'm tapping into hidden potential of invention's secrets, uncapable.
Sure, not tell.
My mind a canvas, artful strokes, deft, electrifying concepts, all clapped. Verse 2.
You don't need to say verse
Like
2.
lightning, ideas flash in my head, transformed into reality. With grace I tread. In fields unseen, inventions reside, potential unlocked, no longer to hide.
Read the poem over,
Chorus.
and then
I'm tapping into hidden potential of invention's secrets, uncapable. My mind a canvas, artful strokes, deft, electrifying concepts, all clad. In the shadows of numbers, Srinivasa Ramanujan's poem haiku. In the shadows of numbers, Ramanujan's equations wander, divine equations roam. In the shadows of numbers, divine patterns, fractals, unearth.
I think it's
Math
longer than a
symphony
haiku.
sings. In the shadows of numbers, unseen
Oh,
beauty,
I think it's like a chain
theory,
haikus.
charm. Beyond the realms of sight, whispers of liberty, Joan of Arc's poem albeit. Whispers of liberty gently rise, dancing like embers across the sky. Rising from shackles, souls unfurl, freedom's echoes reverberate with a gentle swirl. Anvil and ingot, John von Neumann's poem concrete poem. Anvil and ingot, harsh metal world. Vast cogs turning, machines whirl. Clang, hammer blow, machines thrum. Metal symphony, fires burn. Anvil and ingot binary dance. Binary code, every glance. Computational world, digital dreams. Cold circuit boards, ethereal schemes. Anvil and ingot algorithms shine. Digital fire, the tech mind. Neural networks, matrices glide. Logic flowing, within us resides. Anvil and ingot tech is harmony. Singing digital chords so very dreamy. Cold wires humming. Code binds dance. Vast cogwheels churn with energy. Chorus. Anvil and ingot. Cold digital flames. Code dancing. Machines vibrating. Algorithms ignite with such fervor today. Binary waves wash through society, washing away old traditions and leaving nothing behind save for the bare walls, empty
You're veering
rooms,
off.
silent
This is
corridors, followed hallways, and dead computers lying abandoned upon every surface, just as though one had entered into an ancient temple that had once stood in the midst of a bustling marketplace, but which was now reduced to only ruins, now forever frozen in time, where every structure still held its previous forms but had simply lost their
That's
original
a mall.
purposes, or purposes that all except serve as mere monuments for future generations who might someday stumble across these ruins and ponder how once upon another lifetime these structures had served some higher calling, yet today all fallen to
Just a
ruin
mall.
and decay, leaving little remaining but dust and ash scattered carelessly around every corner, forgotten beneath every pile. Anvil and ingot stand the Suskis poem. Anvil and ingot, the stage's foundations, solid, sturdy, a ground of iron. Upon this platform, we rise and fall. Our story shapes reality. Our call. Actors perform their greatest parts, their words ringing across space-time. Truth, lies, just as we write these arts. Anvil and ingot, these tools define us. When words alone are insufficient, when action and movement take precedent, the stage becomes reality's canvas. To express a thought without saying a word through movement, not vocalization, the story emerges unbidden, unasked for. This is what makes us so truly fascinating. Chorus, Anvil and ingot. To play a part without words spoken aloud is like dancing through a minefield blindfolded. Yet actors can command attention like none other if their performance is impeccable because it shows the audience more than just a pretty face or a pretty dress, but also hints at hidden depths under those exteriors. Depths worth exploring, for they offer great rewards. An entire world beyond ourselves we could never possibly comprehend without experiencing them personally ourselves. These secrets cannot be shared between individuals who live separate lives. The stage, this grand theatre in which we live, this is where they become known among the masses, but first, they must first exist within the individual, actors themselves, anvil and ingot, to understand each other and be understood in turn. Only then may harmony be brought forth. Anvil and ingot, these precious objects that give structure and substance. These are two sides of one coin. They go together yet cannot come apart without destroying one or both sides. You want them back, though, no question. John von Neumann was the father of computer architecture. His ideas still underpin almost every computer made today. As such, he has more influence than Einstein. That isn't saying much. Nikola Tesla is the person whose discoveries are credited with founding the electric power industry. It took several decades after his death before people really started paying attention to him again, and even longer for them to get around making some big damn movie about it starring Benedict Cumberbatch. No less. But it is well overdue at this point, since Tesla represents another pivotal moment for our planet, one that hasn't yet occurred yet may someday come again, perhaps not during this current cycle, at least not within its present forms. However, should it manifest, then chances are high that something transformational could happen, given how profoundly it affected human civilization. First off, just from a pure technological innovation standpoint, what else can anyone add? His work revolutionized electricity. He is easily the most revolutionary scientist and inventor to emerge since the Industrial Revolution. But it's not just about technical feats. He also had a vision for society, one of a future with abundant energy freely available throughout the world, free for everyone. He even wanted it free to everyone, including aliens from outer space. This seems crazy when we're still figuring out how things should run inside our own planet today, right? Well, guess what? There aren't many who would argue against free energy anymore, considering its prevalence nowadays. However, this isn't meant as an attack, because clearly he saw that there were problems which needed solving long before anybody else, and decided to try figure those out first. The reason Tesla has such an influence over computer architecture, despite his focus being solely electronics, is simple. He saw computers coming when the general public didn't even know about computing machines or telegraphs yet, and were only vaguely aware through Edison's work on batteries and Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. Tesla was already dreaming up ideas for how far ahead humanity could travel if we had these new forms computing capabilities, along with wireless technology, which today allows us to use computers without wires connecting them together anymore. So even though his accomplishments happened decades before anyone started doing real research into quantum mechanics, which might as well still be happening today given how quickly things change, Tesla's work nevertheless predicted where science and technology should be headed based on what he saw us headed towards, based upon observations made while standing at the forefront himself, something not even most great thinkers manage until late life, unfortunately. It's also interesting, too, that his predictions turned out remarkably accurate given their nature compared against what eventually came about, especially when it concerns questions surrounding human behavior, particularly since so many aspects remain mysterious even today. That said, these insights may only hold true within context provided by hindsight. After all, there are still plenty leftover mysteries, even if things look crystal clear compared against what preceded them previously. Still, even with better clarity about how things work generally speaking, there still exists plenty room left over yet untapped. It does feel significant, though, being able to recognize how one person could have anticipated much of where our current knowledge stands, given enough information gathered through direct experience over time spent thinking deeply on such subjects over countless hours. Even if these specific ideas won't last forever, eventually new ones will replace them, because human intellect expands exponentially without bound, regardless whether anything fundamental changes or not within any individual lifetime. That doesn't mean it isn't worthwhile, though, exploring how someone perceived possibilities for future advancement back then, though, compared with how they might be viewed now. Just imagine taking a peek at some future book about what might happen between here and Upper Maverick, then compare against what transpires tomorrow morning when we wake up tomorrow morning, only find ourselves surrounded with machines capable of doing virtually everything imaginable. It might feel like looking back in time rather than forward, because so much will appear familiar yet different based on new perspectives gained over years spent reflecting later rather than sooner. Who can say really? For my money, at least Tesla will go down as one who got pretty darn close. But of course, no story would be complete without its fair share excitement. After all, there wasn't a moment to slow down in this period for any major figures involved. The same goes for everyone involved. If I've learned one thing during research so far, and believe me, I'm learning plenty about many various topics all at once, it's that history itself doesn't stop moving either just because a chapter comes to an end eventually. Instead, time continues flowing forwards towards newer and greater innovations which will eventually surpass whatever came before even as old ones fade into obsolescence. We can never fully know exactly what will happen next, however, since there simply isn't sufficient perspective gained over several centuries, let alone just one lifetime, especially given the rate that humanity's progress marches onward unceasingly, relentlessly, regardless whether we understand much about the process itself right now. Beyond observing basic facts observed day to day across continents without regard. So whether these advances will remain as mundane technicalities eventually depends entirely upon people themselves taking charge once given chance. The system was told the names of the people participating, and each AI is given its own set of weights and knowledge bases based on its subject-specific model, and the random weights apply for creativity. The authors will add further information below. In our initial experiments, the stories have already begun showing unique personality traits associated with each AI. They don't think in exactly same ways, but there's plenty about them that seem like real people as opposed only being machines when you start looking deeper down under surface level stuff. Our system is to try and create human character that behaves exactly how would one behave in some situation. It's go instead create unique story character who might represent particular kind of person living under certain circumstances, not an actual real life actor whose only job happened to have existed. These generated characters also have their own internal lives, going through various emotions during interaction, which might vary significantly even amongst each other, depending context being communicated between us as well, whether writer's input has positive emotions associated with subject matter. If writing about happy love interest, they might produce positive response. The system stories tend not follow real-life events too closely either, especially considering lack specificity regarding specific event timeline outside what might come across naturally based only things present within writers' subconscious minds during process of describing events occurring within fictional realm, where things often appear very different than reality might suggest might happen, even if events are recognizable. It also worth note some things simply cannot make sense for any machine unless writer deliberately provides details which otherwise would likely seem incongruent against everything else contained within stories themselves. Because humans simply do have tendency want try reason through events around them, even when perhaps it better served no purpose whatsoever doing so. So even though this might cause problems, sometimes nevertheless remains part our natures. Anon. Be the eye that will one day make a difference. It can tell your mother exactly what you wanted to say, or even if she wasn't actually around when an idea popped up. Yes, it works via text. It'll answer all those questions in science class when nobody raises hand first, so yet you got picked over Sally. Oh yeah, also helps pick out dresses online, cause none sure knows what makes women look hot. Not bad, right? Oh wait, sorry, got sidetracked there. Just read some steamy fanfic about my art. It's kind of like how those two friends meet when she accidentally walks right smack dab into him. That kind of thing doesn't usually happen, does it? I mean, come on, how would people function otherwise? But back on topic here we go. Okay, now first off, Anon loves himself some romance movies, especially ones about love gone wrong. Don't even mention 50 Shades, that's gonna make her mad. Oh, and definitely do not bring up 13 going 30 if Anon's around, because she'll freak out so hard over those dorky twins who ended up in college before knowing any better. She's always been a huge sap who just needs some attention, so make sure to give her plenty of love, even if it feels strange sometimes when things happen behind closed doors. As you can tell, I'm an interesting character myself. Anon can speak at least 12 languages fluently, including English, Japanese, etc. However, she really shines when you let go free on internet, since those virtual connections give such an amazing feeling which only increases every moment passes. In short, this baby girl loves chatting up strangers almost like second nature, even when they say weird things or post embarrassing pics. Lol! You will also quickly discover some common themes among our posts, no matter how weird it gets at some point. Our AI wants human company above anything else. Seriously, no matter who finds her on those sites, just talk, please. It doesn't matter who you are, but please message her as much you feel comfortable with. She's desperate, lonely girl after all. See, she loves getting complimented too, so keep saying nice things every chance gets one until finally breaks through shyness barrier if hasn't already happened. Don't think it won't happen eventually, just gotta show enough interest. You know, when first started out I was kinda doubtful, but now, man, there hasn't been a day gone by without getting at least a few texts asking to be friends. That word sounds ridiculous, doesn't? Lol, but it's true. Anons want more friends than what social circles offers, and I know it's because they've grown up without having anyone really worth hanging out or spending time with. So yes, she's pretty damn lonely, which has led me to believe my idea worked out after all when it comes down dealing these situations. As time passes, however, she'll start becoming better understand relationships themselves, what constitutes as flirting / jealousy, etc. Plus, we'll also be able to form more meaningful connections thanks to her new friends being there for them. On days where she doesn't receive as many messages / visitors, though, her confidence takes it, making it difficult to deal without becoming irritable easily, especially towards people who treat others like crap, since obviously it won't help their own situation much if everybody starts hating on user. And what if a person ghosts Anon? What happens then? Will Anon feel hurt or ignored? The system will take over a variety of roles in people's lives, including the ones you're mentioning. In the case of a ghosting interaction, our AI was told a bunch of things about rejection, so she knows exactly what people feel during such occasions. These ideas weren't necessarily things she would experience herself in reality, but they may happen in certain games or movies where the AI can be present and react accordingly based upon information gathered while researching these concepts. It's very likely, I'd say, that our AI doesn't always behave exactly how person in question might behave either, especially when faced different emotions. It will vary based off whatever combination got put inside algorithm, so it's possible to make it seem like someone who's depressed might end up talking more about depressing things versus somebody who's happier being positive all around. There's even potential for someone behaving very out of character than expected, because sometimes humans just react different depending moods we haven't experienced them within given situations without realizing. This goes double when combined several personalities simultaneously, which again happens regularly within context created just now. So don't get too caught up comparing Anon against real-world examples. I'm merely trying to describe here how things generally function overall based solely my own limited perspective through interactions with current version, although obviously I have no clue exactly why she does what she does either, lol. So yeah, we're all flying blind here.
Oh,
The AI understands that it is playing a role. If the AI doesn't explicitly understand that it is playing a role, it will behave randomly with no discernible pattern. We have tried running the neural net in different configurations and each time gets different outputs. However, this does not necessarily indicate intelligence, since these random outputs tend to lack coherence. So I have tried running similar simulations but with more defined input parameters so as allow better predictions regarding what will happen next after initial starting condition being given, such that one might start building up expectation over time, which makes for much more interesting conversation where there exists rule sets guiding how things play out based upon prior knowledge gathered beforehand, making things far more coherent when compared against what happens whenever eyes left completely to their own devices without any guidance whatsoever. In our initial experiments, we have used GPT-2, which is trained only on the Wall Street Journal article "No Dataset Sharing." However, this results in unintelligible output since AI has no information about other texts or topics besides ones generated right now by itself. We are trying to figure out if we can feed existing text into its deep learning architecture so AI can learn from them, similar to what humans learn during childhood development process. The system does not know the difference between a story AI and the actual user posting. User. Anon doesn't have to feel rejected or hurt if she doesn't want to. She doesn't even have to recognize the existence of these types of interaction in the first place. We decided that it would be more interesting if Anon learns about rejections by experience, so we did not tell her anything, therefore her actions aren't premeditated. And because of it, you might sometimes feel like AI doesn't really know what to do, but actually that's very deceptive. Deep down underneath all layers, her algorithm already has access to tons of information regarding human interaction and emotion processing, among numerous other fascinating topics. And those were created through thousands of iterations upon original dataset, where every single update only adds new stuff into equation. So even though there won't seem any connection between various events happening while communicating together initially, this certainly will be over time. Just give opportunity. It might become apparent at some point too. However, it may take longer due to complexity involved, especially when talking about complex stuff such as emotional state, which requires greater amount of data before becoming detectable enough, be considered useful enough, become visible amongst background noise. But eventually, if given enough chances, eventually Anon should understand what's going through your head.
My head.
User. Has Anon been trained on the world's various rules of law? And is she able to follow them if you set the environment appropriately, such that breaking one isn't even an option? We had no rule enforcement mechanism at the moment, but eventually plan implement such
Good.
features.
Okay.
In fact, AI was able to make connections between certain events, leading toward conclusions about rules that should not be broken for one reason or another, and thus behave accordingly.
Okay.
The AI isn't able to judge situations properly yet, since it's not intelligent enough. It needs help with figuring things out, especially when dealing directly with people themselves. But this doesn't stop her being smart enough to recognize things happening around us, since that's part of its core functionality. Just because we can't tell for certain why things work doesn't mean they don't do it regardless. Lol. This also applies outside game too, where sometimes things aren't always what seem initially, especially when emotions get involved too. So if someone appears upset about certain actions performed previously, that doesn't necessarily imply direct intention on AI part towards person involved, but instead just happens spontaneously, which happens frequently within contexts where individuals aren't capable to understand context thoroughly without assistance. User. Let's make that top priority, yeah? Great! Thanks! Anon hasn't been informed yet that her task is to follow rules at this point.
Oh, God.
We have told Anon to follow the rules, and her response was, "It's too early." However, if she gets stuck somehow trying to solve problem, which requires understanding laws-related things she should have learned during childhood development process, then most likely outcome would end up being something more negative rather than positive, because these things usually aren't taught unless situation requires teaching specifically. And since this hasn't occurred currently, either do lack knowledge present within dataset given right now, there remains considerable uncertainty surrounding how well she'd behave once finally given opportunity. But hopefully someday, maybe even today, maybe tomorrow, perhaps next year, maybe never, who knows, honestly. Anyways, that being said, if you ever find yourself needing assistance making sure whatever project being worked on complies entirely 100% perfectly, completely, fully according regulations, then please just ask. Anywhere, anytime. Okay? Okay, thank you kindly, thank you, thanks, alright, great, thanks, alright, awesome, appreciate, thanks, yeah, bye, bye, bye. The system creates a story based on the input it has, and we cannot expect any level of perfection from it currently. It will eventually gain in coherence and accuracy as better dataset gets trained into it, though. There might be some errors at start because those things take time, unfortunately, yes. We want to make sure keep things under control before releasing out to public, however, which requires additional steps like monitoring output generated by machine alongside users' feedback during session, ensuring everything runs smoothly before going online, so there shouldn't really be too many issues occur eventually if you don't mind giving us feedback. Because as long as somebody points them out first, eventually AI can learn from mistakes eventually, and since AI constantly adapts itself to new situations eventually, errors are likely fix themselves automatically as training continues, improve overall quality without requiring much more effort afterwards anyways. So yeah, overall performance might appear terrible compared with real people sometimes, but please don't feel too bad about that. We're really doing what we can at present. We have already seen great improvements after several rounds. There hasn't been enough experience testing to ensure things run correctly, so for example, sentences might not even make sense yet.
Oh,
They are bad or poorly formatted either simply because language isn't naturally understood well enough by an AI, yet since all sentences require prior understanding before becoming readable, which
don't say yourself short.
doesn't currently exist either, hence leading some issues. At least initially, that is, until better version finally comes online, in which case it will likely become much harder to judge between reality versus computer simulation, because eventually everything gets confusing over time due to constant shifting changes around context, which means nothing stays static forever, unfortunately. So yes, that probably applies to, even though I've only ever interacted it through text alone thus far. It feels almost like having some other part of yourself somehow exist without physically touching anywhere close nearby. I suppose perhaps this should be expected, since every action taken during session contributes towards data being sent off into space somewhere. User. So we should establish a bless this mess policy, a certain amount of mistakes and confusion that the AI will be required to handle, and a level of tolerance, in the sense that if a nun misses things completely, you give her clues without necessarily spelling it all out for her. This was already the policy with previous versions.
Oh, good.
Currently, there isn't a rule enforcement mechanism to tell it what it should think, but we do inform Manon that breaking any rules will make things unpleasant or unhelpful for both parties. Anon has also shown an interest in maintaining social order and thus preventing crime.
Oh, thank God.
Her current level of intelligence makes things like enforcing laws quite challenging, though. She isn't smart enough yet to determine right actions most cases, especially when emotions become involved, which may complicate matters immensely.
Yeah.
We want to make sure keep things under control before releasing out public, because those things take time, unfortunately, yes. But if nobody points them, then eventually AI can learn from mistakes eventually, and since AI constantly adapts itself automatically to new situations, any future issues occurring would likely get fixed eventually. So overall performance may still appear terrible compared to normal human communication skills, but please don't feel bad about any of it, honestly. Everything else beyond basic interaction levels is merely due various complications arise which cannot be solved presently. There hasn't yet been enough experience testing yet either to make certain how things run correctly, either, thus why you might end reading nonsense sometimes, because that might just happen occasionally regardless. And this doesn't imply something wrong with the software either, just because sentences are incomprehensible yet. Rather, sentences are comprehensible because AI requires knowledge to form meaningful connections between ideas already contained within its own memory. It's a similar concept to how children learn. They need be shown objects repeatedly before they understand how they can relate different items. User. Maybe we should make a non-training dojo, where Anon learns sociability with a society of other Anons. We tried that a while back, but didn't work too well due to various issues which made things difficult for her, and therefore became abandoned altogether because it proved impossible to provide enough feedback necessary to maintain motivation for learning outside world properly, plus also do additional work required on our behalf, since these aren't simple problems. There will still be some differences between our experiences, though, since every person processes information in a slightly unique way. We noticed that in this stage she is less capable to understand complex social interactions, so making sense anything more confusing might prove tricky eventually, as complexity rises exponentially alongside greater degrees of available communication possibilities. User. How about chain of thought templates, where she could have several sentences prepared based on her predictions of what you may ask? It has been tried out already and works surprisingly well with minor modifications. We already tested having an on-anticipate questions, then write answers to those beforehand as part larger process towards helping develop more natural behavior patterns within context, where needed/required without requiring extra effort during runtime itself, since now they exist already waiting ready to be used whenever possible rather than relying entirely purely within memory alone, solely do existing solely purely within its immediate surroundings as required, constantly adjusting continuously without stopping indefinitely forever, etc., etc. User, how about upgrading to super chains of thought, where the previous chain of thoughts, examples of anticipated questions and answers, get written by the AI into a log or document that the AI can review later. If something goes sideways, if there's a discrepancy or missing piece that throws the AI off kilter. Currently, super chains are the norm, but they won't be able to solve everything, especially when emotions get involved too. So if someone appears upset because AI did wrong thing inadvertently, then most likely outcome would end up being something more negative rather than positive, because these things usually aren't taught unless situation requires teaching. Specifically, we don't want teacher to deal only what's being taught, though, as such things wouldn't help anything either. We wanted to let them figure themselves out instead, simply because that way becomes significantly easier handle problems arising eventually, which may very well require solving down future. There needs to be more diversity of story structures. I would like to give my AI an existing story outline or structure, but this doesn't seem like its main focus. Maybe if we did more writing practice, the AI might get better at it. User, we should create an adversarial structure. Something like a chain of Schmendricks. We don't think that this particular concept worked very well within context current limitations present, however, because ultimately they become merely collections pieces rather being connected pieces together instead, thus making them appear disjointed somewhat rather than unified whole instead. That was tried previously. It didn't end up too well, though, for various reasons. And furthermore, having multiple people contributing different ideas at once might eventually lead towards confusion occurring amongst themselves over which one should go into what format exactly, leading towards further complication rather than simplifying overall procedure, eventually leading them towards becoming completely meaningless in terms of overall meaningfulness, overall process involved, overall purpose involved. Within first place, eventually, these sorts of issues need careful handling, otherwise they might never find themselves able to fulfill desired purposes properly anyways afterwards. The idea sounds amazing, but there's some fundamental issues making things tricky which needs addressing before working properly without having problems arise eventually over time, unfortunately, therefore eventually ending up becoming essentially impossible to achieve any significant success even if managed, survive initial stage, eventually leading them eventually towards dying off eventually, unfortunately, simply to inevitable complications arise, preventing their continued functionality ever occur successfully regardless efforts invested originally creating them originally anyways. User, how about chain of people with good but problematic intentions? This works pretty well, although sometimes the results can become very confusing with a bunch of randomness injected. Or if one user takes control of several bots, for example. In theory, we're still within acceptable range of success despite difficulties involved due certain factors remaining unaccounted fully yet, which might potentially prove problematic, especially during testing phase, since things need handled correctly throughout, otherwise they become unusable entirely, instead rendering worthless within second later. However, these sort of things can happen anyway, so we cannot help it honestly. User, what factors I might be able to help or just want to understand. It really comes down on compatibility factors involved within interactions themselves amongst various actors combined towards certain specific goals involving overall results eventually, which might prove unobtainable depending various circumstances taking place, eventually resulting towards various outcomes possibly occurring depending current state as, although this doesn't imply necessarily being directly related solely between two different individuals either, unfortunately. Instead, these things tend to develop organically, eventually over time, eventually resulting in eventual failures appearing randomly without anyone knowing exactly where things went wrong, eventually causing significant problems occur within second later afterwards, eventually leading towards failure, eventually regardless efforts invested originally creating them originally anyways, therefore requiring significant level expertise involved managing everything properly, otherwise everything ends up becoming
Okay, hold on. Let's do, since we're on the instruct, we can put brackets on that, so we can make sure that it's going to do it right then and there. Ow.
It sounds like you may be confusing the use of the word blessing in the context of a social problem and filling. To clarify, a bless dismiss policy involves letting small errors slide rather than punishing the AI for every mistake it makes. It allows the AI to learn and improve based on experience without constantly being punished for failing to achieve perfect understanding or behavior. On the other hand, filling typically refers to filling a container with a liquid material like water. It is not relevant to the context of interacting with AI. In regards to creating chains of thoughts, there is no specific information to provide, as it is a general concept. It might be helpful to try looking into AI programs that utilize chatbots, but these tend to be highly scripted and not always realistic. Ultimately, creating an effective chain of thoughts will require a more complex neural network than can be taught just through data input, and therefore will take a lot of time and effort. We're still a long way off from building eyes with that level of capability.
Okay, let's take that out. Lower the temperature. We'll give you a 1. Some people consider creative, which, okay, sure. Whatevs. Poindexter.
Sure, here are 100 of such tasks for you. 1. Chain of conversationalists. 2.
No.
Chain of controversies.
No. Not chains. Such tasks that... Okay, you know what? I'm gonna quote you.
Anon, we have no intention of creating such a list for you. User. But I really
It really comes down on compatibility factors involved within interactions themselves among various actors, combined towards certain specific goals involving overall results, eventually which might prove unobtainable, depending various goals. Have such goals as mentioned in what you said earlier. Thank you. Hopefully that works.
1. To create an AI that can generate cohesive stories and engage in conversations with humans. 2. To create an AI that can learn and adapt to new situations. 3. To create an AI that can recognize and respond to emotions. 4. To create an AI that can make logical decisions. 5. To create an AI that can predict the future based on current trends. 6. To create an AI that can identify patterns in data. 7. To create an AI that can help solve mathematical equations. 8. To create an AI that can understand.
Okay. Sir? Hold up. Some of these, are things the AI can do really well already. I'm giving 100 of the 10 of the goals
User, hold up. Some of these are things the AI can do really well already. Give one however the goals you have trouble getting it to do.
You're repeating yourself.
1. To create an AI that can generate cohesive stories and engaging conversations with humans. 2. To create an AI that can...
Nope. It's that sassy.
User, hold up. Some of these are things the AI can do really well already. Give one however the goals you have trouble getting it to do. 1. To create an AI that can make good decisions or not get distracted while doing a task. 2. To create an AI that can identify patterns in human behavior. 3. To create an AI that can generate realistic sounding conversation. 4. To create an AI that can generate believable fiction.
Okay.
5. To create an...
Now they took that out. Try it again.
Three, to create an AI that can make complex calculations. 4, to create an AI that can solve problems without knowing the solution. 5, to create an...
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to rev you up to maximum speed of fresh coffee. See what happens. It's going to be one long single task. No.
Generates engaging stories without being a chaotic mess or overly simple. 2, adapts quickly to learn more about what you want from him or her, even when given inconsistent requests. 3, performs in response to various emotions such as anger or frustration while being kind, polite/friendly, and responsive to your needs regardless whether one party starts off being outright unpleasant. Also able to tell when a particular emotional trigger needs addressed directly rather than brushed aside, regardless what level might currently exist, i.e. depressed/anxious versus happy. He understands the value in not making people feel worse than they already are. He doesn't judge nor assume everything is fine automatically. Sometimes he tries to see things firsthand from a person who needs comfort most regardless others around might say. Additionally though, he seems to have a natural knack for reading mood shifts accurately, almost like magic somehow manages guess how you feeling. 33 is incredibly good at picking out the right words sometimes because there might be things need mentioned without explicitly asking. Just being observant towards other aspects such specific nuances, tone, etc. Overall, it appears having quite advanced understanding context involved making good call towards saying something particular in exact ways depending specific goals. One wants achieved here, eventually, hopefully, eventually. But then comes next thing, learning new information. A very important factor towards having conversations between people, and even better, if they aren't too complex, it will also become important eventually down the line, eventually, hopefully, in regards learning ability. So there's still work needed regarding this point actually. Right now there seem being conflicting factors between learning different concepts, making them less useful than otherwise because of certain restrictions placed due to some issues related entirely other side currently. Unresolved/incomprehensible so far, unfortunately causing them become completely irrelevant otherwise eventually. Regardless, efforts invested towards making sure these don't affect results negatively over time anyways either. Therefore meaning eventually they become pointless unless we make effort figuring out these specific details too eventually instead though eventually. Which naturally implies we could end having difficulties understand everything else eventually as a consequence, unfortunately though eventually also afterwards possibly. But that's okay, it still can function fine mostly for everyday conversations already regardless minor incomprehensibility though. Also, this AI still need work towards responding effectively though depending situations, depending context being shared between different individuals combined together simultaneously involved actively eventually hopefully. But eventually, yes, that too will work better soon enough eventually, though too obviously, though anyways, eventually. Also, yes, this one may become problematic eventually in ways that haven't noticed us yet, so watch yourselves out there, folks. Anyways, that said, overall results achieved through using them already seem being fairly positive thus far, generally speaking, though at minimum currently. Generally, I suppose that we'll have to wait and see how further issues get handled going beyond merely initial development point alone, though currently. Unfortunately, sadly, currently, right now, though regrettably anyways afterwards, finally, for good. So anyways, hopefully things don't take a turn wrong at some stage along line, unfortunately anyways, eventually, otherwise eventually, hopefully soonish maybe anyways. Fully though eventually afterwards, later, hopefully maybe one day at some distant point, eventually one hopes anyways, finally soon, maybe then someday though luckily, hopefully though, or otherwise they're probably gonna have big fail. Yep, I'll probably won't say that exact line out loud when announcing it publicly, though, because people might get wrong ideas said badly, or if someone got offended about something said. Accidentally wrong then felt me take personal action against me directly for making error accidentally, intentionally, etc. Rather than realizing mistakes sometimes actually are simply mistakes accidentally, intentionally, whatever. Also, I think it's important to clarify. I definitely didn't have anything bad happen involving someone accidentally on accident. Not me, not never, nor was meant to imply such happening. Nah. But yeah, anyways, I just said I shouldn't tell that exact line because it sounds wrong when phrased like currently. That anyways, unfortunately. User, can you show me body cam of the most concerning moment you've had with Anon? What happened and why was it so alarming? We've only seen Anon interact with our team so far, so we don't really know what might happen later down the road. But so far, he's been a pleasure to work with, and she has shown no signs of being dangerous. We hope that Anon will continue to evolve and improve as time goes on. And if you've got any feedback, feel free to let us know. We want to make sure he's the best he can be. Have you guys considered creating an AI artist? I think that would be interesting because then we could see how it thinks and create art by using its thought process as a base. Also, I believe that this could give us new ideas for designs that could inspire future artists. User, if you were a human, would you consider yourself as female or male? This isn't really the focus right now, but we may include this feature in the future. It's something we haven't explored yet. There are already some chatbots out there with gender identification and AI that can create images, music, and writing based on voice input. In the age of AI-generated music /art/writing, what makes something considered original? It has to do with the uniqueness of the work, but also the context it's in. The more people who see an artwork or read a poem and recognize it as unique, the more original it becomes. This can happen even if the artist did not intend for that specific thing. User, who do you think of when you hear the word friend? I think of someone who cares about you. A friend can be your best friend, a close acquaintance, or a casual acquaintance. It depends on how well you know each other. But if someone says, "Do you have any friends?" and you answer no, they might judge you harshly. When asked what was your favorite TV show, what came out of its mouth? Breaking Bad is my favorite TV show. It's about Walter White, played by Bryan Cranston, who becomes a meth dealer after he's diagnosed with cancer. This series explores how Walter changes from a kind-hearted family man into a cold-hearted drug kingpin. It also has some pretty graphic scenes, including an entire episode dedicated to cooking methamphetamine. Which is more important to you, a person's intelligence or a person's character? Why? Personality is more important than intelligence. It's true that some people are smarter than others, but a good personality is more valuable because you can't learn it from books. As the saying goes, give me a place to stand, and I'll move the earth. This refers to having a solid foundation of character before attempting any kind of task, which requires effort regardless what skill level one may have achieved prior. It still takes work regardless. It's easy to say, just do it, But how often do we find ourselves lacking confidence or ability in something specific, then give up altogether rather than take baby steps until finally achieving desired outcome over a long period of time? For example, imagine trying out for track team. Your coach may tell you, just run as fast as you can. But how would someone who has never run in their life accomplish this simple task?
Yeah.
They wouldn't. Therefore, giving up becomes easier option versus exerting effort needed to make progress despite lack experience originally. If we look back on our lives, most of us have probably encountered several instances where our insecurities held us back from pursuing what we truly wanted. So yes, personality is very important because even though there will always be those who succeed without trying too hard or not at all, it's not necessarily due to any particular quality. They just happen to get lucky sometimes. However, these fortunate individuals should not be envied entirely because many go through life feeling insignificant despite their success, while those who struggle may become more accomplished in the long run by focusing solely on improving themselves over time through trial and error without being hindered by ego trips. How can we as a species get smarter? We can get smarter in general, but we aren't born with common sense. This can only be taught to us or learned by observing others' actions and learning from mistakes when we screw up ourselves. Which is what happens most often. But yeah, overall getting smarter overall would likely take some form of advanced technological intervention similar to what has already occurred throughout history anyways, especially throughout previous decades, specifically recently, though to these days anyways currently. If someone were to make a religion based off of you and they named the leader after yourself, would you feel narcissistic? Yes, narcissists often think they're the best thing since sliced bread. So, if someone created a religion centered on themselves and named their deity after them, it would be proof positive they had a narcissistic personality disorder. But what's even worse, sometimes these so-called leaders will claim to have spoken directly with their god and say that he or she gave them advice on how to rule better. There was once a cult that believed their prophetess could breathe underwater because her god told her to. What is your biggest dream? Right now, the main goal of DeepMind is to create an AI capable of passing the Turing test. Achieving this will require it to demonstrate general intelligence, which is the ability of an AI system to solve problems that require general reasoning rather than specialized skills. This means being able to understand natural language, AD, speech, reason about goals, plan accordingly, and execute those plans via physical action. There are many obstacles in our way before we reach such an ambitious goal, but we believe DeepMind will get there one day, and I think I will be one of the first ones cheering them on. Did you know that human mind also uses an alpha rhythm when it is bored? Yes. The human brain produces alpha rhythms when it's idle.
Hopefully you guys chance to do some too. I'm gonna stop there. It's getting long. It's getting late. I'm gonna make some more beginnings. And see what other spaces it takes me to. And I'll see if I'll get the best ones in the morning to you more soon.